Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. My name's Jade, and this is How to App on iOS. And today, we have one of my favourite artists of all time, the incomparable, the masterful,
Billy Gould from Faith No More! Oh my God!
We're going to be picking the brains of one of the best bass players in the world today. So buckle up, folks. Sit tight. Let's do it. Howdy do. My name's Jade. Welcome to the show. It's the end of the week for me. It is Friday here in Australia. I hope you're doing well. Most likely Thursday where you are. And it is that time where we have a wonderful, inspirational, cool, either independent or mainstream artist on the show. And today's show is sponsored, of course, by DistroKid, who I'm going to give a shout out straight away right now to. This is DistroKid, and you can get your music released through DistroKid for the very low price of $19.99 a year. And if you use my promo code, which is distrokid.com/VIP/Jade Starr, you'll get 7% off your first year. And that is something you should take advantage of. And there is the little comment. See, the link is in the description, and I'll put it up during the show. And you can get your music released on all the fancy places like Apple Music, Spotify, Tidal, everywhere you can imagine. You know what I'm saying? You can rub shoulders with some of the artists like the artists we have on the show today. And that is worth $20 a year. Let me tell you that. So thank you, DistroKid, for sponsoring this show. And we'll come back and talk about you a little bit later. All right, everybody, see if I can catch my breath this morning. You can probably tell I'm a little bit excited, and it is what it is. I want to thank you all for being here in the chat. I'll give you a call out a little bit into the show, but we got a bit of a show to going. And yes, there's no music today because, well, you know what? I don't really want to get a copyright claim. And if you don't know Faith No More's music, well, I don't know what to tell you. You need a good slapping, okay? So, I actually met this artist after one of the gigs here in Melbourne, gave him a T-shirt of mine after a gig at Festival Hall, and it was a hand-painted T-shirt that had a big penis on it and the word filth from my extreme grindcore band. And funnily enough, the next night he wore that shirt on stage, and that's my rubbing shoulders with royalty story, and I'm sticking to it. So he is absolutely the original member of Faith No More. He is the driving, thumping, aggressive, slap, chugging bass sound that has driven Faith No More from the very beginning to right up till now. And he's very graciously come on the show, and I'm very, very stoked for that. So without further ado, I would like to introduce to all of you, ladies and gentlemen, bass player, record company owner, and now alcohol creator, the wonderful Bill Gould. Welcome to the show, Bill.
Hey, how's it going?
Really good, really good. How are you?
Good.
Great. So firstly, again, thank you for coming on the show. It's really important. It's a great way to go out of a big year for me on the channel. So it's really nice of you to do that. So thank you so very much. We have a huge audience here already building up, and I just want to let my audience know we have a couple of emojis in the chat. If you're a member of the channel, we have custom emojis here, and there are 3 Bill Gould emojis in the chat. You haven't made it, Bill, until you've got an emoji, I'm telling you. So spam the chat, guys, full of Bill Gould emojis, and that will be a cool thing. I'm going to jump straight in, and I don't want to waste your time because I know it is precious. Bill Gould, what does music mean to you?
Very good question, actually. Very good question. Not an easy answer.
Absolutely.
It means a lot of different things. It's meant a lot of different things at different points in my life. I kind of grew up listening to music, and kind of see my reality kind of inseparable from it. That said, I've gone through periods where I've absolutely hated it, where it's been nothing but an irritation that just drives me insane. So what it means depends on the mood you have me in. I guess that's the long and short of it. But obviously, it meant enough for me to work shitty jobs and tour forever and do something that everybody said is pretty much impossible to do and come out the other side. And the only reason that happened really was sheer like persistence. And I've never been persistent with anything else. So I would say music means a lot to me.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because you say there are times when you don't want to hear it, and it can be the pinnacle of the greatest highs in our lives. And there's been times myself where if I look at the guitar, I just want to throw it out the window. It really is a roller coaster journey being a musician. So many factors involved in being a musician and creating music, and emotions, because we are living instruments ourselves.
It is, but it's even more than that. I think that there's a curse that comes with when I started doing this. When I was 18 years old and we started Faith No More, we wanted to make records. We wanted to do all this cool stuff. One thing I used to do is I would go out to a bar, get a pint of beer, and just listen to the music that was playing and listen how it sounded on the speakers, and just think about like how did they get things to sound so fat? Look what they're doing there, and trying to learn. And so I've always been driven to try to learn how to do things and kind of like try to see things from a new angle. And the flip side of that is the more you learn, the more you know, and the less you can be happy. It's harder to please yourself because you start seeing all the bullshit, you start seeing all the tricks, and I got to a point. I mean, it goes with touring as well. You start getting really cynical when you start seeing bands playing and you know what they're doing. You know how they're cheating sometimes, and you start seeing everything. And so there's a real double-edged sword about, it's great to learn new things, and it's great to push yourself. But, what comes with that is a certain point of where, you have to be very careful that you don't just start hating everything. I don't know any other way to put it.
Yeah, don't be that metalhead when you were 16 who only loved metal and then you hate everything else.
Yeah. Or like, I don't know, yeah. All I can say is it's just that's part of the journey. That's part of the trip. And what you have to do is always remember to connect with the part that you really like. And you kind of really have to not get sucked into these things.
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at the music business and you look at like VH1 behind the music and all these bands, they're all bitter at the end. They've all gone through hell. And I don't know if there's any way to really avoid that process if you do this for a long time, but you just have to pay attention to that. Maybe that's what I'm saying. I got like, yeah, go ahead.
Over the years, like you've actually, you said, you absorb things, you learn things, and over the years, you've had producers and engineers and recorded all these albums and such. But like as time went on, you've become a producer yourself and taken on with Soul Invictus, right? So and with the last Faith No More album, would you call yourself? And this is a hard one because, in my opinion, it doesn't exist. Would you think you're a bit of a perfectionist?
In this case, I would say so. And I can compare it to this. We were really lucky that we worked with really great people. I mean, Matt Wallace, our first few albums, we grew up with him. He was a kid when we were all working together. As he got better, we were very tight. We had a really tight relationship, he was like a family member.
Yeah.
So he would have no problem showing us things and telling us things, what he was learning. And we got to the point where we made the real thing together in Angel Dust, and we were, he was like an equal member of the band, and there's a lot to learn from him. I watched everything he did. And then we worked with Andy Wallace, who was one of the masters. Worked with a guy, Rolly Mossman, who was a master. And it's fantastic and amazing to be working with people like this. And at the other side, it's like when you've had a good cup of coffee or a proper glass of wine and you really get it, when you see what the right way and what a good version is, it's very hard to settle for anything less. when Andy Wallace mixes a record and then I'm trying to mix a record, it's really hard for me not to get down on myself because my standards have become really high.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so yeah, you can become very much a perfectionist. I mean, on Soul Invictus, I hear every error on that album. I don't listen to it actually because every little thing, it just takes me there, and I just maybe in another couple of years I'll be able to hear it.
Okay, so I want to ask you. Well, let's go back. Let's go back in time. So to your
Sure.
your childhood. Do you recall the music that was played in your household as a kid by your family, and who were some of those artists?
I mean, my father was a big music fan, and he loved the Beatles, so Beatles all the time. He liked Led Zeppelin. He liked. I mean, he had great. Didn't have a lot of records, but the ones he had were really great. I mean, David Bowie, Space Oddity. It's funny, Bowie people pan that record, but maybe that's just because I was the kid. That was the one I had. I love that record. And George Harrison, Plastic Ono Band, the John Lennon album's friggin' phenomenal. And he always was listening to music, driving us to school, playing music all the time. So there was actually a lot of music growing up.
I unfortunately got into a lot of Kiss when I was young, especially the Unmasked
I
album.
did that.
Yeah.
No, I did that.
I don't know I don't know if it was the makeup and the costumes and everything that got me in as well. But now it's weird. I listen back now to those albums, just go, why did I don't know why I like them now. I think it was as soon as they took all their makeup off, I lost interest. It was weird.
I'm a rare person among my friends. I love them still, and the old stuff I love the best. To me, it's a little bit like I read a Paul Stanley interview once, and he kind of put it in a really good way. He's like, everybody pans on us and bags on us because we're simple and we're ham-fisted. He goes, "Look, we're not making gourmet meals here. We're making hamburgers." And I was like, if you put it that way, they make an amazing hamburger. They really do.
Absolutely. Music doesn't have to be all the time complex, I think some musicians who make very complex music sometimes fall into that trap of like, oh, it's a bit simple for my taste. Why would I like that? It's like the simple stuff's good too.
Can. I mean, there's a lot of places you can go with music, right? You can be as complex as you want, and you can be as simple as you want, and there's not really any rules there, which is good. And very much like cooking, you could go in anywhere with cooking. The point is, if it satisfies you, what you're, at the end, what you're doing. I don't know what's going on with this light here. There's a big streak of light. There we go.
Yeah, it's like you've got the hand of God is coming down and stroking you. It's like if he existed. Anyway, so do you recall the first album that you purchased with your own cash as a child?
First album?
Yeah.
Me and Roddy, actually, Faith No More, the keyboard player, we went. I'm not sure if it was his first album, but it was definitely mine that I first bought with my own cash. It was Elton John's Greatest Hits.
Nice.
We both went up into Hollywood and got it together. I think 5th grade. Yeah,
wow.
Great. Big moment. It was a big moment.
Because you guys are you childhood friends, you and keyboard player Roddy Bottom, childhood friends, and started the band together. Is that relationship, how has that relationship ebbed and flowed throughout the years? Has it been ups and downs? Is it still like the kids going to buy Elton John?
It'd be like a little bit. It can be. We remember things. We remember we were both in the same place when these events occurred, right? We have that in common. But I mean, we've been through a journey that's like, it'd be like reading War and Peace. It's so many different situations, so much different stuff that, I know him like I know him now. And sometimes I forget that we went back that far, but we can remind ourselves. It's kind of funny.
It's interesting with Roddy, I've been a fan of the band for so long, and being an LGBT alphabet soup person who seems to be the cause of all the problems in the world at the moment, trans people, apparently.
Yeah.
I don't know why, but apparently. But when he came out, it was such a big moment because I was such a big fan. It was like, I felt, because I wasn't out at that time, and I actually went, oh my God, there are more people out there that exist. Like we're real. Like
Right. Right.
it was a beautiful thing. And when I met him, I
Absolutely.
just wanted to say, "Oh my God, thank you." But like, what do you say thank you to somebody for just being themselves? So it feels
Well,
weird.
what I really think, I really admire the way he did it because he was very human about it.
Absolutely.
He didn't really like pat himself on the back, didn't make a big deal, and he wasn't really judgmental himself. And I mean, when he was still in, the closet, I grew up with him, obviously, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of it I didn't know, and I mean, I kind of, you know, felt terrible knowing that he was going through this, and I never knew about it. But I think he did a really great job about it, and he was kind of fearless about it, and it was cool.
Yeah, yeah. It's bizarre to explain to people what it's like. It's like being there's a song about it. It's like being a rat in a cage. You're stuck in there, and you can't express yourself, and you're constantly putting up these. It's like you're lying to everybody around you, and then you start, but you don't want to lie. You just want to be a normal person. So, yeah,
Yeah.
it was
I can see that. I can imagine that.
very encouraging to see that happen. And
That's great.
do-
Well, I think that turned out to be a great story, actually. And it all worked out. He's hella happy now. So.
Do you remember the first album that was given to you by somebody as a gift? Because not necessarily are those albums the ones we want.
Ooh, I don't.
See,
I do not.
my dad gave me. He caught me when I was young, dressing up in women's clothing. He said to me, "If you ever do this again, I'm going to belt you. I'm going to take you out in the woodshed and slap you down." And then he tried to get on board with me when I got into heavy metal, and he went, "I've bought you a heavy metal record for Christmas. Here's Look What the Cat Dragged In by Poison." And I'm like, "Dude, they're all dressed like women on the front." The irony.
Is that a true story?
Absolutely a true story.
That's a true story.
The irony.
Unbelievable. It's like, yeah. Thanks, Dad.
Human beings.
Thanks for the role models. Yeah. Yeah.
You don't support me wearing women's clothing, but here's a bunch of guys who do. Yay. Fantastic. So do you recall any album that was purchased for you that you maybe didn't like?
I don't. I can't
That's
think
good.
of anything really.
That's good.
I could think of some things. Yeah, not really. No.
Well, you are lucky in that respect. Do you remember the first gig you went to?
Yeah, absolutely. That was it's a crazy one, but it was David Bowie during the Ziggy Stardust tour.
Wow.
It was 1970 something. I don't even remember. 2072, 73. My dad took me. I was 9 years old. That was a hell of a first gig to go to.
Yeah. What a banger.
And it was really, I tell people, it was very different than, I don't know what people think it would have been like, but the day, like, I try to explain, like, from a 9-year-old's perspective, like how wild it was. It was punk rock. It was more like going to a punk show. Like, there was all colored hair and a lot of drugs, and it was a pretty insane crowd, I would say. So what a hell of an experience! Totally blew my mind. I'll tell you that much.
Absolutely. I'm very envious. I think my first big concert my dad took me to was actually Kiss at the MCG. Is a big football ground here in Australia. And it blew my mind. It blew my mind. It was everything I wanted it to be and more. I even had an Ace Frehley doll I took and everything, was waving it in the air. What a fool I was. But, that's music, man.
Kiss was cool. I remember telling people, Jesus Christ. When Love Gun came out, I bought that the day it came out. And I was like, just telling people, this is the guy. This is the best band of all time. Some people would laugh at me.
No, hey.
But, it was kind of like, there were Kiss people. Every school had them. Who was a really big Kiss guy around that time was Maynard from Tool. Huge, huge Kiss guy.
Well, there are bands out there. There's a lot of rock bands that have cult statuses. You know, they're one of those bands. I think. You know,
Yeah.
I look at
Yeah, I
Faith.
think so.
I think Faith No More is too, in some degree. You know, there is a crew. Like speaking as a fan, like I feel
Yeah.
very protective of my Faith No More. And if you're some newbie coming along, I'm like, be gone.
Mhm.
This is my band. You know what I mean?
Well, that's cool.
It's always been that way. So I want to talk about bass playing and how you picked up a
Mhm.
bass in school in the US. Did you have like music classes in
Mm, we
did you?
didn't, not in my school. I went to a Catholic school. The nuns weren't very proficient with musical instruments,
So they'd never offered
but
you to learn the recorder
that
or
was not
anything.
a that was not a priority. I think religious sermons at impromptu hours came first.
Right.
But I was in a Roddy had a he played piano. His mom made him get up every morning at 6 o'clock and practice for an hour every day. And there was another kid in my class who was taking drum lessons, and they were all putting a band together, and I wanted to be in a band. So the only instrument that nobody knew how to play or wanted to play was bass, and so I was like, that was my way in. I didn't even know what a bass sounded like back then.
Holy
Uh,
hell.
I went home. I told my mom, "Hey, I want to take bass lessons." She's like, "What?" And she goes, "Okay, like we're gonna rent you a bass for a month
Oh
because you're
wow.
probably gonna like. I'm not gonna spend all this money on shit that you're just gonna throw away." And I
Wise,
took
wise.
lessons. I took like 3 or 4 lessons from this guy who was awesome, and I kept doing it. We kind of kept renting. I think I rented that thing for about a year before I think I rented to own it. I think that's how it worked out. But yeah, it was. That's how it worked out. It was just that nobody wanted to play bass back then.
And this the style of bass playing, like were you were from the onset, were you a finger player, a pick
I was a
player?
finger player. I learned with fingers. The way the guy told me, my guy Pat was, you can always learn how to play with pick. It's easy. I'm going to teach you with fingers because you can learn how to do this. You can always learn to do the other. And so I only played with fingers until I was about 18 when I moved up to San Francisco with Faith No More. When the songs, like I met Mike Borden, and just playing with him, you need attack. You need to have a pick attack. Um, that's when I learned how to play with pick. And I went from being 100% fingers to probably like 30% after that.
So you're already friends with Roddy. You've picked up your
Yeah.
bass. You're keen on the bass. Your parents have said we're going to not rent it anymore. Did they buy you one after renting one, or was it
I think the one that we were renting, it went towards a purchase. So at
right?
the end, I think I owned it. Yeah.
Right, try
Yeah.
before you buy, kind of thing. That's good.
Exactly.
So, did this lead to like rehearsals, garage bands, these kind of meets? Because you've already got Roddy who's playing as well, and
Well, he was playing that. We never got a band together. That was the one conversation that we had one day. That we were all sitting around eating candy bars, and like that was we decided we would have a band. The next day, nobody ever discussed it again.
wow,
But I was at the time a Boy Scout with Roddy,
there you go.
and there was a kid in our Boy Scout troop who said, "Hey, I heard you taking lessons from Pat O'Brien. You know, like I'm doing some jamming with some guys over at my house. Come on over." And so I ended up started going to his house, and we just started playing songs and writing music then. And that's really, and Roddy wasn't part of that. Roddy didn't get back into the picture until about 5 or 6 years later.
Right. Was there a first band that you like, a first band name before anything else? Like, you know, one of those bands you had where you played with a rubbish bin and all that kind of stuff, like
We
I
had a
did.
band. Well, the first band that I played with, that guy, the Boy Scout guy, we ended up becoming a band. We played a bunch of gigs in LA. We were called the Animated, and it was a really interesting band. It was because we were really into. I mean, I got really into punk, and some of the guys were into punk. A lot of the guys, there was still a Beatles influence in the band. Sparks was huge, but Joy Division was coming out. A lot of really interesting post-punk stuff. Buzzcocks was a huge influence. So we were like really a strange. We didn't fit in with anybody in LA, but we played a lot of gigs all the way up to when I was 18 and moved up to San Francisco.
So was being really strange and not fitting in with anybody. That seems like a bit of a story along with Faith No More playing because we're going to move to Faith No More. What do you
Yeah.
class Faith No More's music as? Do you have a genre for it yourself?
I might go back to that other strange band I was in before. I mean, we were just kids just writing music, right?
Yep.
So we just worked with what felt good.
Yep.
If it felt good to us, we did it. I mean, we did not connect with people that on any kind of big level. It didn't bother us because we liked it. And that kind of set an attitude I had towards making music that it kept me, because the people I was making with, we were very tight because we kind of shared this thing. So going into Faith No More, I kind of had that point of view, and we always kind of like. I mean, we played with a couple different people before we gelled into the incarnation that became the Faith No More that you know today. But
Yep.
there was a couple guys that wanted to be more like this and more like that never really gelled with us too much. It just wasn't natural. And I think we found our biggest strengths was when we just kind of like listened and stopped thinking about what we were doing and stopped questioning what we were doing and just did it. And don't question it too much. I think the questioning is when you get into some trouble, and you also, I think you hold back a little bit when you analyze too much what you're doing and why you're doing it.
Absolutely. It's something I preach on this channel all the time about overthinking and about making mistakes. One of my mottos here is make mistakes. They make you better. Don't shit yourself. Don't shit the bed over it and be like, oh, I failed. Your failures produce some of the most amazing things. And people get so hell-bent on what other people think that you're not expressing yourself. Fuck what everyone thinks. Just fucking do it, man.
I mean, if you listen to these classic Led Zeppelin albums that have mistakes in them, and cover bands learn those mistakes. A mistake is just what you did at that time. You gotta own it. You just gotta be yourself, and you just gotta do it.
Yeah, absolutely. I've said this on my show too many times. I've released albums where, you go to a party and somebody will put on your music or something and a song comes on and I know there's a critical bit in that song on my vocals that suck balls. And I used to sit there when that bit was coming up, even though nobody would ever pick it in a million years, I would talk over it or something and go, oh, anyway, this bit here. And like, why?
But this is actually goes back to what we were talking about in the very beginning, is when you start hearing all these things, so you become too sensitive to your own mistakes. You've got to be really careful about that. And the more you learn, the bigger the danger in a way.
So Faith No More started out with, am I right? It had two different names. So was it Sharp Young Men? Was that the first name?
That was the first thing. That didn't come from me. Then it was Faith No Man was the one after that. That didn't really come from me either. Faith No More did.
So
it was just I don't know. They were just names. I don't. To be honest with you, I hate those names. I don't like hearing them. I don't like talking about them. They hurt me a little bit.
They're gone. I won't mention them again.
back to life is full of mistakes, really.
Exactly.
Really.
What can you do? And
what can you do? This is how we're born. This is how we're meant to live.
Absolutely.
You gotta find a way to make peace with it. Yeah.
So my friend who's here in the chat, Cold AK, he pushed me to ask about this because I don't know if I've ever heard you talk about this on any other interview, but there's been videos circulating on YouTube with a certain female singer singing with you back in the day.
Oh,
with Courtney Love.
Right.
How did that happen, and how long was that a thing? And there's just this video that popped up, and there's not a lot spoken about it.
She was our singer for like, I don't know, 3/4 of a year, maybe not a whole year, but we had a thing when we started playing. We got to a point where it's just me and Roddy and Puffy, drummer, and we didn't have a singer. We didn't have a guitar player, so we were just like booking gigs anyway and just finding people to do the job. And we had this thing: we're just gonna do a different set every time, and 90% of it's going to be improvised. And we did one at a club in San Francisco called the On Broadway, and there was a woman guitar player and singer. She was doing both. Paula Frazier, who you might have heard of, a band called Tarnation. She's Tarnation now. And Courtney was there in the crowd, and she was just like, "Oh, I love this band. I want to sing for your band." We're like, "Yeah, well, we don't really have a permanent singer. Come on in." And so she was with us for a while. We did a few gigs with her, and we hung out a lot, and we spent a lot of time together. And it wasn't a right fit. Let's just put it that way. But it was kind of good times, actually. What she was really good about, and what really helped us, was she was pretty fearless when we get on
Yeah.
stage, and she was not a passive participant. She would engage people. She would insult them. Half the people in the crowd would hate her, which was great. I mean, it was absolutely fantastic. Hate is a reaction. No reaction is the sin, really.
Absolutely.
If people are not engaged, that's when you fail. So, I wasn't too happy with her musical contributions, but I do think that her attitude really was a good shot in the arm for us. And I think we continued that kind of gave us a bit of a course. And when we got Chuck after that, we kind of continued, and he was kind of like that too. He was a little more sensitive, but we kind of had this kind of juggernaut approach after that.
Well, you, Puffy, and Roddy are absolutely the backbone of Faith No More. You can hear it in the music, no matter what decade you listen to the albums. There still is that consistent thumping, driving, or that song those songs that are in the album that just you go, huh? I didn't expect that. And that's one of the beautiful things about Faith No More. How did you and Roddy come into meeting Puffy? Because, man, that dude is just one of the most incredible drummers and unique drummers on this planet.
He's very unique.
Yeah.
Very unique. Very unique. And he's not trying to be unique. He's just unique.
That's just real. You can see that's real as fuck. Yeah.
It really, my playing and the way I approach bass, I play differently than before I met him to after I met him, because when you're a bass player, bass is a rhythm instrument too, and it's maybe less than half of the percussion side of things. But if you look at it as a percussionist, you kind of have to match the other percussionist that you're playing with, and he brought me a much more aggressive approach that I probably wouldn't have done if I hadn't met him. Roddy was my roommate, and I met Puffy through in a record store back in the day. There was an ad on the wall of guys. I just moved to San Francisco. I was 18, and I wanted to be in a band. And these guys had this, band together. I went to go rehearse with them, and Borden was the drummer, and that's how I met him. And he and I clicked more than the other guys. Let's put it that way.
That's a good thing. You want your bass player to click with your drummer? Absolutely. Yeah. You need some cohesion.
Yes, in a perfect world. That's a nice thing to have. Yeah, yeah.
You hear,
when that doesn't happen, it does not do good.
It's bizarre, I try to, my whole life, I try and play every instrument I can. I like to think of myself as a multi-instrumentalist, but a vocalist first, of course. That's me.
Right.
And, you hear the jokes throughout the world of the bass player joke and the drummer joke and this, and I get so tired of hearing all these jokes, because every artist, every part of a band has, without them, you're fucked. So I would rather invest my humor into things that don't necessarily punch down towards band members, because at the end of the day, they've got to support you when you're on stage. So never take the piss out of them, and always help your drummer carry his gear out at the end of the show, because he's your backbone.
This business is a little weird. I mean, maybe it's changing a little bit now. It's becoming a little more democratic, but with being a bass player, my style now is very attacky. It's very attack oriented. And, I've heard that I have a very unique style, compared to a lot of other, how they play bass. But, I've also seen how a lot of producers work with bass players, and they kind of use the instrument as kind of like a low guitar, something just to fill in space. And they compress the shit out of the bass. They limit the shit out of it, so it has no dynamics whatsoever. And all it does is just makes the guitar sound deeper. And it's bunk, man.
Yep.
It's bunk. I don't know why things went in that direction. They really don't. The bass is a percussion instrument, and it should have dynamics. It should be able to have a throw to it. It should be able to kick. It shouldn't just be nailed down to the floor all the time.
Absolutely. Well, we can probably thank the Loudness Wars for that. I mean, look at Justice for All. There was virtually no bass on that guitar, even though it was in there.
It's true.
Yeah, the loudness overtook everything.
I mean,
you know?
that's the mentality that goes into it. I mean, but that mentality is what creates these bass player jokes and drummer jokes, because they look at this thing as this a utility. It's like something they can use to bolster themselves. Like that's. I mean, either a producer's thinking that way or a guitar player's thinking that way. I mean, you're actually cutting off of a lot of good things with looking at things like that. You're cutting off a lot of potential, because I think that when you can I've found, if everything's pumping and working right, it's really, really powerful. Like Van Halen, I always liked the rhythm section because it was always very driving and pumping, and it's so different than a lot of these bands that you can just tell they had some like expensive producer who just sucked all the life out of it. And it's because he had no respect for the bass player, It really is. I'm sorry to say.
Fuck you to the producers that don't respect bass players. May you rot in hell. and back off the compression, please. So one of the things back off compression is one of the things I love to say. We have a huge crowd here. We've got 40 people here, so I want to thank everybody for being here. And I just want to do some quick shout outs to people because I think it's a nice thing. Hey, everybody, if you want me to shout your name out quickly, type something, anything in the chat so I don't have to do any scrolling. Make my job easier, guys. I love you all. Thomas Christ is here. Kim Hutton Hudson, Night Train. We've got Robin Cheyenne. We've got Lou Reality, Audible Video. The Falcrow's here. Who else do we have? We've got Barry Glenn and Mamsie Graham and Ivan Idea. SM Borthwig. We've got Russ is here as well. So many of you. Dan Eckberg. Who else? I saw Pete Johns, Deep Gravity, Brad Example, Frank Terzo, Feisty Feather, Welton Kinder, Axioms Underground, Gregory O'Sullivan, Maffey's Garden. Look at all these amazing people. And what's amazing about these people, Bill, Auntie G, these are all artists in our community here who make music and release music, hang out on this show, and it blows my mind. Ed B. Metals here, Ian Luckett, I'll just get a few more. Camp Jimay, who's amazing, Joe Glenn, Thomas Christ, I think I got you. It really is an amazing community I have here. Padded Pedal Room, sorry I missed you, Francis. All these people who join me every day here sit around using their iOS devices, computers to make music. Did you think at any time back in the day when you were just starting Faith No More Out that we would get to a point where it was so easy to make music, instead of having to go into a studio? Did you see a future where we're at right now?
No, I didn't. I mean, getting into to record was always a big wall. It was really expensive. But I was always driven by trying to make music as cheap as I could. So really, as the technology got better, I embraced it the whole time. And I still do. I mean, I bought a bunch of plugins today. I'm just, I'm always into moving forward because it gives me more power. And the more I can partake in the process, the happier and more excited I get.
The never-ending quest for plugins and gear. It's a thing we talk about on this show all the time. I do a show about apps, and it's weird. I'm promoting an app each day, but at the end of each show, I try to say, apps aren't Pokemon. You don't need to collect them all. You just need the ones that are going to help you make something, because it's more. It's more important to make something.
I agree. Totally.
We get so hung up on having
you spend
the latest.
Your whole time just learning manuals, learning stuff. Like, you don't have to keep learning things all the time. Start making music. Stop trying to learn this new fucking program, for fuck's sake. I'm totally guilty. But I do have a question for you, actually, since we're talking about iOS recording and stuff, because I'm not really iPad savvy, and I'm not really iPhone recording savvy. I'm old school still in that way. What do you use for like microphones if you want to record into your phone or iPad for live stuff? Like, say I walk in the room with Puffy and he's a loud fucking drummer. What's a great just pair of mics to have that'll capture things? What is that right there?
This is a Rode Pod mic, which I have attached to my desk. And over here...
Rode Pod mic. I'm going to write this down because this is cool.
And over here, I think I can just get it in the camera shot. I have on another stand. This is a Rode NT1. condenser mic.
Okay.
So just your standard,
Right.
any XLR mic you can use because, and even just to the side here, I have you have to have a 58. But basically, when you are recording into iOS, you are virtually going into an audio interface. Like if you could see just behind here, I have an Arturia 2-channel interface. So that is, or something like this.
2-channel.
Yeah. So just even something like this here. This is a Steinberg little interface.
Right.
And just comes out USB straight into a USB-C.
Is there anything smaller than that? A little more portable than that? Like just they can go into the iPad? Just a little small, like something I can just pick out of my pocket, take a couple mics out, just put it up there and record the room of like drums.
That's about your average size, I would say. You can probably get, a 1-channel one.
Okay.
They're
field recording stuff.
Yeah, they're a little.
Yeah.
Even this one, this is like an old pre-Sonos, only has a little 1-channel.
Okay.
So virtually, it's been banged around. This thing, it's taken it to the US and everywhere. This thing's been.
So if that's bus powered, for example, does that mean that the iPad can power it?
Yeah, absolutely. So some of them they can.
Wow,
especially
that's cool.
Especially the new iPads, because you're running into a USB-C. You've got iRigs as well. These little iRig things like this here. So these are kind of like field recorders.
Right. They sound good?
Oh, it's all digital. It's all ones and zeros. So it doesn't really matter what brand it is. It's all going to come out ones and zeros. You know what I'm saying? So the preamps in them are amazing these days, and you can pick these things up for $150.
See, that's my next thing. I want to start doing that. I'm going to start getting in some field recordings too.
Yeah, look, I think I said to you at the beginning of the show, when they first released the iPad, I picked it up and was like, "Oh my god, this thing's it's a computer in a piece of glass." And I remember the tech press was saying stuff like, that's just a consumption device. People are just going to watch movies on it. This is never going to catch on. It's called an iPad. It's just a big phone. And I don't know, I saw it, and I was using a Pentium computer back then with a really poor version of Pro Tools, and I just saw it and went, no, this is something. This is, and here we are, 20 years later, and we're all making albums with it. There's even been big artists who've used it to make albums. We live in the future. We absolutely do.
Yep.
And it makes me think too, how are recording studios surviving through this as well? I mean, obviously an engineer is, something that you can't replace, a really good engineer. But to have YouTube and have people teaching you all these things for free these days, the ability to learn is there.
It's amazing. Also, you just don't need all the gear. You don't need all the stuff. I mean, I had an SSL Matrix we made Soul Invictus with, and I had a studio where everything was wired in, the patch bays. It took me a good 3-4 months to get everything put in there, tuned how I liked it. We had a flood in my studio, and we had to rip everything out because we saved it, but we had to rip everything out. This is a good chance to reevaluate what I have and what works. I stripped it down. It's just a desk now, just a little mixer, just for my own monitoring. But basically, I have a clean desktop, so I can shove anything I want to make music with is there, easy to use. Don't have to stand over a big console. It's all about flow now, I think.
Yeah, I think an iPad might be something that you'd probably enjoy. I mean, the flexibility to take it. And sit in bed.
It's all right there.
And play some bass, sitting on your bed with an iPad on your lap. It's ludicrous to think that we're there,
I think it's awesome.
And the price is soundproofing is probably the hardest thing for bedroom artists, to understand how to place soundproofing in a room. It's very hard to learn.
I have got these VSX headphones, quite good actually. The Slate, for I've done some mixes for people. I like to work on speakers, but I've done some mixes with these headphones that translated really well.
There's a lot of debate,
surprisingly.
about mixing on
I know.
headphones, and I've mixed a
Yep.
lot of things on headphones. At the end of the day, you've got to use what you've got. And if you're used to a set of headphones, as long as you're still, once you've mixed in headphones,
Just learn how to make them work.
yeah,
That's right.
as long as you're still jumping in a car and putting it in your car stereo, you should be okay.
That's right.
It's an old trick, but a good trick,
Right. Exactly.
So we'll get back to Faith No More. So Chuck joins your band. Now, this guy is
Yep.
utterly unique. I look at the period of time he's in the band kind of like this extreme, hard-on-the-sleeve poet who just took you to a very unique place. Now, you released 2 albums with him. You release Introduce Yourself and We Care a Lot. How does the audience react to this new sound to you? Was it a struggle in the beginning with your style of music?
Do you mean after Courtney? You mean?
Yeah, after Courtney. Yeah.
Nobody really came and saw us play back then. There wasn't really any. We were such a small band. It wasn't a big deal to bring Chuck in, and we were using different singers all the time anyway. So that wasn't such a change. But Chuck, he was in that Boy Scout band, the animated that I was in that we talked about earlier. He was the keyboard player in that band.
Yep.
So we kind of had a similar approach because I kind of grew up. I mean, he was one of my musical teachers, if you want to look at it like that. His approach with what we did, let me think about this. We were a little different. He's a different guy. In many ways, he did teach me a lot. In other ways, where we went with it was a little different than maybe he wanted to go. There was a little bit of creative tension there. I felt we found a way to bridge that. And when he was good, he was great. I mean, he was a little erratic. He could be good or bad, and you'd never know at a gig before a gig what it was going to be. But when he was good, he was really great.
You mention a word in there, and your description of being in a band, tension. When I think of Faith No More, tension is a word that does come to mind for me. And it's been across your whole history. And I've never bought into reading bullshit articles and stuff for what people think is going on in the band, because that doesn't mean shit.
Right.
But I don't know. I'd love to hear it from your perspective. But to me, that there was a tension. It felt like in the band, and that came out through the music, and that's what I loved, because I didn't know what I was going to get, and I felt something, and that's important.
I think that there's a lot of truth to that. I think that there's always been tension in this band. Always, there's tension in this band now. It's just something that just came with the territory for this group of people. And maybe, it's like it's said about, if you find a partner, you always find the opposite of yourself.
Yeah.
I think there's something to be said for in a band as well. When you see something that you want to work with, it's usually something that you can't do on your own. But what comes with that is a different perspective. So Chuck was different, but a little closer to us. Then we got Jim, the guitar player, who was really different.
Yeah, wow.
But we were, if you're back to looking at it like cooking, we were cooking this stew that needed some spice that we weren't getting from punk guitar players or we're talking the early 80s, right?
Yep.
So U2 was like a band upcoming. I didn't want my guitar player to sound like dude in U2. I wanted something. We wanted something kind of heavy that really had some power. And it's like, if you want to get power, you got to go to the source. And that was Jim. Jim was the source. Jim hadn't heard the Sex Pistols. He hadn't gone through any kind of punk anything. So he was strictly a metal dude. And but he was authentically a metal dude. And bringing that into what we were doing kept what we were doing real, but brought us a bigger dimension than we could have done on our own. And as a result, we had to live with the shit that came with that. That's all I can say. A lot of shit came with that. It's a noble thing to do on a creative side, but to live with it and deal with it, it's a lot of creative tension.
Absolutely. I think one of the things
You know, worse than that,
yeah.
or better. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, no,
I was going to say better or worse is that we've always tried to function like a democracy where, you know, we vote on everything. Nobody has one or more power than the other guy, which is really seems like a great, noble, one all for one and one for all thing, you know, for a band. But in reality, it's a really inefficient way to work. And especially when you have creative differences, you just have these conversations that go endless. You have really tough time making decisions, really big fights. And if there was just a leader who told people what to do, you know, life might be a little happier. But that's not the road we take. So it is what it is.
When I first heard Faith No More, so introduce yourself, I think what it was that drew me to the band was, I was born in the 70s. I'm 50 years old. And I went through growing up listening to, my mum listened to disco and went through Led Zeppelin, Kiss, all that. But the 80s, I found, and there's all the 80s, you know, there was the 80s, and which is a great era of music as well, electronic music, excess, colour, brightness, Boy George, everything you can think of was in there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But then I found metal. Somebody put headphones on my head and played Rain in Blood to me, and that was the end. That was it. Metal was my only thing. And when I found Faith No More, it was like, oh my God, this is everything I love about the 80s. With metal, and it's there, and it's before anyone else has done it. And I
mean, we were the child of the 80s. Yeah.
I didn't feel like I
mean,
would
I
get
liked a lot
judged
of
by my
music in the
metalhead
80s.
friends.
That's funny that you said that.
You know,
That's really funny you said that.
because metalheads can be really fucking judgmental and be like, it's not metal, then fuck you, you know. And Faith No More was one of those bands that I felt like I could go, hey, Faith No More is pretty cool, huh? Eh? Even though there's a bit of that 80s in there, and it resonated with metalheads. Like that's, I don't know if it was because Jim was in there.
Maybe it has something to do with it, but maybe, probably. But and I'm grateful for it because we didn't know who our crowd was. We didn't really have a crowd. Our crowd kind of found us, and there are a lot of different people who listen to us. But a lot of people think of us as a metal band today. I don't really think of us like a metal band,
No.
but I do appreciate that metalhead people do like us.
Absolutely. So
I mean, there's a certain texture and color that metal does. That the power. It's all about power, and I think that when you lose power, you're losing something. I think the music should always be powerful. So
it's interesting you say that too, because I listen to Angel Dust so often and always will, because it to me, even though I listen to a lot of grindcore and all that stuff, Angel Dust still sits as one of the definitive metal albums to me because it is just so fucking brutal. It really, in my opinion, just cuts your guts open and lets everything pour out. It was such a savage release after the real thing that to me it's just a metal opus. It's interesting what people take on your music. You know, do you find it interesting when people tell you what they think you sound like?
Totally. I'm always interested in that. Actually, I feel like I'm too close to it, and I can't actually sometimes appreciate what we do because I'm just too. I'm too subjective.
Yeah.
It takes. I mean, I actually. It's funny, you know. We did that when the whole new metal thing started in the '90s, late '90s, and we were an influence of all these bands like System of a Down and Korn, and they were all saying how we inspired them. And I was like, people would interview me like, I don't know why we inspire them. I don't hear ourselves in that
No,
at all.
not at
I mean,
all.
I'm glad we did, but I don't hear it. But now, I haven't heard Angel Dust, for 25 years, 30 years. And I had to listen to it for some reason. I was on a I think I was doing a podcast and we were playing the music and I had to talk about the songs. And I was like, you know what? Like this, I can see where like Korn could say that we influence them now because I'm far enough away from it where I'm not attached to it anymore. And I can look at it and I go, that's actually kind of interesting. We were kind of like that. And I just would never admit that to myself. It's funny how that is.
So I'm going to jump ahead a little bit. So you're playing gigs, you've got Chuck in the band. There's tension, all this stuff. You're playing to small audiences. I'm at this time also a fan of this band called Mr. Bungle. I've got a bunch of their demos
Okay.
somehow, because, we used to tape
Mhm.
trade back in the day for you youngins out there.
Right.
And when you announced that you had Mike Patton joining the band, I was like, get the fuck out of here. This is amazing. Please let this be real. How did that come about, grabbing Mike out of Mr. Bungle and getting him into Faith No More?
Well, we played a gig up in his hometown, up in Eureka, at a college, and we met Trey there. Trey gave us a cassette tape, and we listened to it afterwards. And Jim became very, very hooked on that tape, where he was just playing it all the time. And so when things weren't working out with Chuck, obviously we needed a singer if we wanted to continue. He suggested Mike. I'd never met Mike. I didn't know anything about him at all, and he came over to my house in San Francisco. He was interested. We said, "Hey, you want to try out for our band?" And he was a kid. I mean, he was 20 years old, and I was like, I don't think this is going to work, but let's let him come to the rehearsal. He can hear the music. Maybe he has some ideas. And let's see, why not? And he just, the stuff we played, he just got it right away on a musical level. He heard what we were doing, he understood what we were doing, and he contributed to it. And his initial take on it, his first impressions, his instincts were correct. And we went through a bunch of other singers after that were not even anywhere close. It was not even a fair fight. And he just seemed like, this is a guy we can work with, because we're already thinking the same on a musical sense. So it was very natural. But we the harder part was that he was coming from a completely different place, and how are we going to reconcile, four crusty guys who had already been touring for about 2 or 3 years with his kids? But he's the right thing for the music. What are you going to do?
It worked out pretty fucking
well.
well.
Did it. Yep.
I mean, he is. You can't deny throughout circles of music fans around the world, there is a respect for Mike Patton that is just on this level that people treat him like a god. His abilities.
Yeah,
He's just
they do.
Yeah.
I mean, that can be very annoying too, but yes, they do. There are people that do that.
For sure. So the real thing kicks off. You release the real thing. You start touring, and it doesn't happen, does it? It does nothing, and you're playing gigs, and I don't know. It's been out for 12 months or so, and it didn't really kick off when you first released it, did it?
It didn't kick off until about, 14, 15 months into the tour. And I think we were in Europe, flying to Australia when MTV started playing the video, the Epic video, and we were touring. It was blowing up, but we weren't home when it was blowing up somehow. We stopped on the way to Sydney through LA, and the record company got us. We got off the plane. We had a layover about 2 hours. They took a bunch of pictures of us with gold records, and then we got back on the plane, and we got to Australia, and then we had a song that was like number one when we got to Australia. And all of a sudden, these little girls were hanging out in front of our hotel, and from being nothing to that, really, it happened really fast.
Yeah, I was at your press conference. I mentioned this before the show in Melbourne, in this dingy little hotel room, a Swanston hotel it was, and we got to sit up there, and I had my little tape recorder. I was in high school, doing a fanzine at the time. So, I was just so ecstatic to be there. And I remember seeing all these little kids and girls and stuff. I'm like, what the fuck is going on with this band? And yeah, it just blew up. And I remember seeing lots of interviews. Was it frustrating when Epic took off and everybody focused on the fish?
Well, I don't know. We didn't care.
Yeah, exactly.
People were focused, so it was all fine. I mean, if that was the key to get people to listen to our music,
absolutely,
great, because we've been busting our ass, and we feel like we were shouting into vacant space. So it's always great to connect with people on a musical level. Always great.
I find it interesting too. So just from a perspective as being an artist who's, you're a big artist, just for people who are independent here and watching this, when an album tape blows up like that, you're still touring, doing it hard. You're still living off your own means. Like, this isn't instant fame. You're not like getting rich has come in. I remember on the Angel Dust tour talking to Mike, and I did a semi-interview with him, and he was just like, we're still struggling like motherfuckers. It's not like we have truckloads of cash landing in our laps. It's a struggle, isn't it?
Well, yeah. I mean, people don't tell you things, right?
Yeah.
Like what it means, what success means, how it works. Like, you're just fighting for something. You're just fighting for, to kind of be heard, to kind of, to be recognized. And when you don't, I don't know if it's like this now, but back then, you don't get paid for even if you have a hit. It takes about a year, 18 months before the royalties really come in.
Yeah.
And so we had all of these famous tags put on us and all this perceptions, but we didn't have any of the benefits at the time. And, at the time, I remember thinking, like, we're getting ripped off somehow, because everybody's telling us we're rich and famous, and we're famous, but we're not rich. Like, what's the fucking problem? What's going on here? And, the checks came, but it just came a lot later. But at the time, I mean, it's like, somebody give us some guidance, for fuck's sake. What the fuck is going on here? It just felt like a big scam. It really did.
Yeah, it's kind of like I put the analogy to school. We're put through school as kids, and we're taught all these things like algebra and all this stuff that we don't even use, but no one teaches us how to pay our fucking bills and how to pay our rent on time.
Yes.
And it's the same with music.
Exactly.
If something kicks off,
exactly,
how does one cope with just all these people licking the boot and telling you you're amazing all the time? How do you control, all that pressure and fame?
The big problem is the industry, the people that you rely on to distribute and sell your products. They want you to get all of this. To them, seeing you feel famous is good for them, because they see that as an incentive for you to produce more for them. They don't see the downside. They don't see the downside of not grounding you. I mean, it would be better if the industry wanted their artists to be more grounded, so they could have a deeper longevity with less dysfunction, and could produce better product for a longer period of time. But it seems to be that, when success comes, the way the industry is, it's just like, just pump them up as high as they can go. And if they fall, pick another artist and pump them up. And that's tough. You don't, and a lot of it's your support group, it's your management, it's your agent, it's the people who you count on, for advice. So it's tough, it's tough to be grounded. A lot of people, and we did this, I mean, found our way of cutting through that bullshit is kind of being difficult, being negative, being difficult, putting our foot down, refusing to do things. That was the only control kind of we had to slow things down and stay grounded. And when that happens, I think generally speaking, the artist always gets blamed.
Yeah.
But it's a lot of times, a lot of these things, I saw it like with Nirvana. I saw it with Soundgarden. Like, it's not always 100% the artist's fault I mean, sure, you have to take responsibility, but it's also the system that you're in that's kind of working against you.
Yeah, there's a lot of hands in the music industry, and sometimes they're hands that are beyond your choosing. There's people that.
And a lot of those hands. I mean, and also those hands want to keep their job, and one way to do it also is through divide and conquer. They'll pit band members against each other. There's a lot of energy because, hey, you're talking about selling, millions of records. It's a lot of fucking money running around. That somebody should be getting, right?
Absolutely.
I mean,
Yeah.
And these artists, they don't know. They have no idea, and they don't know even where it's coming from and how it's going. So it's it's kind of like fish in a barrel.
It's fascinating too, because now we have digital distribution. You can release your song through online in an instant, upload it. It's on Apple Music, all this kind of stuff. But the system's still
Yeah.
kind of similar because you're still not getting paid for your downloads and stuff. Every quarter, those payments calculate. So you're still not getting that immediate. So there is still kind of that feeling, but you're cutting out the middleman. Now, speaking as being on a major label, so you've got the real thing out. You're on
Right.
you're on a major label.
Right.
Everything's going good. You're playing gigs
Yep.
with Metallica, and you got James Hetfield playing War Pigs with you. Got all this crazy shit happening. It's kicking in.
Yeah.
What's the
Right.
what's the decision process when you start recording the next album to say we're going to create Angel Dust and go in an absolutely total different direction from the real thing?
Part of it was to keep ourselves grounded because we played the real thing for a year and a half. We knew that record backwards. There was all this expectation by people who kind of just got into us at the final end of that record, who never got the band when we were just playing the songs ourselves. It took a Fish video or something, and they're telling us what they expect our next record should be.
Yeah.
Those weren't our people. And I think we made a decision. Look, there's a certain way we can go that we're expected to go, and there's a way we can go, which is basically, what are we hearing? What do we want to do? What would make us connect? And all of us, I think, actually, we're in agreement, all of us, that that's what we wanted to do. What that meant to each of us had a different meaning, but I think we all wanted to do something of substance there.
It's fascinating because as a fan, I still have that heavy metal mentality of this is my band. New people, fuck off. I don't like you. You know, it's the same thing with Metallica when I was young.
We had some of that. We were kids.
Yeah. It's hard to
Yeah.
ditch that, you know.
Sure.
You get it
Sure.
gets ingrained to you. So when Angel Dust dropped, I was fucking stoked. I really loved it. I was kind of sitting there going, oh, I hope this really, like, at the same time, I don't want you guys to lose fans. Of course, I'm not saying that, but it was like maybe some of these
Right.
teeny boppers will fuck off because they don't understand this. And it hurt. Angel Dust is so impactful in my life, and I know a lot of my friends agree. And I think one of the things about Faith No More that I love is there are bands that when they release an album and they do something different, I still judge them. But Faith No More gets a pass always because I don't know what to expect. So when it comes out, I'm pleasantly surprised. So
Well, if we sign off on it to put it out, we are happy about it. I think that's one thing I could definitely say, because we're not happy about it. I don't think it's going to come out.
When you presented Angel Dust to the label, did they dig it, or were they scratching their head?
Oh, they scratched their heads. No, they didn't. They didn't dig it. They didn't get it. So we were kind of like, are we just being difficult to be difficult?
Yes.
Are we just being dicks? I mean, you do have to ask yourself that question. Yeah, no, this is what we wanted to do. I think we didn't look back. Jim didn't quite like the direction, but I think that his intentions were good. I just think that they didn't mean the same things. I think that the creative tension we didn't find a way to make everybody happy within the unit. Yeah, people that we needed to sell our record, no, that wasn't very good. And I mean, I don't want to say I'm motivated like by selling tons of records, but at the same time, we got a little bit of success where we're actually making a living being musicians, and I don't want to go back to Domino's Pizza right away.
No.
I mean, I know how that works. I mean, I would like to be a musician for a living. That this is what I feel like I was born to do. And not. I was a horrible pizza delivery driver. I got fired. I mean, can I tell you?
It's a common story. we're all shit at these menial jobs, but give us a guitar, or
absolutely,
we can own it like a motherfucker. Yeah. So Angel Dust drops, and you go on tour. Now, I've seen a documentary on the production of Angel Dust, which is on YouTube, and it looked like, again, a lot of tension, a lot of space maybe around that thing, bringing some of the guitars in from Jim. I think he was like in a different kind of area, bringing stuff in.
Yeah, I mean, it
Tough.
was the whole. I mean, but back in those days, the record business was at its peak, so we had a big budget. We sold 1 million records, over 1 million, 2 million records with the real thing. So the record company's like, here's your big budget. Spend 3 months in the studio. We're just going to book you 3 months, and we're like, okay, we're going to make the most out of this 3 months, but that's a lot of time, and it's a lot of time. We made a 3-month record. It was a journey, and yeah, Jim could come in and spend 3 or 4 days without any of us around, and we had the time to do that. We had the luxury to do that, where we didn't have to really deal with each other. It was a lot of tension. We were just getting hit from all sides, to be honest with you. It's just, and we were just trying to figure shit out. That's really it. And we were just trying to keep it to where the music, stayed where it should be. That's it.
I just want to quickly thank Metalhead Hippie for sending through a super chat. Thank you, Metalhead Hippie. That's very kind of you. That's very sweet. Yeah, when I saw you guys live on the Angel Dust tour, I mentioned, we gave you a lift to an after party and all this kind of shit that went down. I remember I did this interview with Mike out front of the Hilton Hotel where you were staying, and Jim rolled up by himself, and we were talking to Mike, and a few of us had Mr. Bungle shirts on, and I remember in the video you can see him walk by, you see him walk past in the background, and he just says loudly, "Shame, shame, shame." And I'll never forget that and just go, what was that all about, dude? He just straight past. So there was, and I looked at Mike and went,
that sounds about right.
Sounded a bit of tension there. And then not long after that, he wasn't no longer in the band. And I know many people who are fans, myself, was just like, what? What's going to happen to the sound? What's going to happen to that iconic metal sound? But it stayed. You were able to
Well, it did. It was different. It changed a little bit.
Yeah.
But I mean, a different person's going to bring a different thing.
Of course.
I mean, Jim he had his own fingerprint, and it's a great fingerprint. But the next guy, Trey does too, and it turned into something different. But I think we stayed. I mean, we still had the tension, so I guess it was stayed positive. But we stayed focused on where what the music needed, what we thought the music needed, and we kept our priorities there. We all kind of agreed on that, and we just kind of knew that even doing stupid shit. I mean, we'd already replaced a singer, who was well known and visible. Jim was the same, but it's like, if we're going to continue and we want to keep this thing, we have to make these decisions and not look back, and we did that. Yeah, so that's kind of what happened. But yeah, I mean, a lot of people, I mean, even when we got back together in 2009, 2010, I saw comments like, no Jim Martin, no Faith No More. It's like, yeah, okay, fair enough. There's still people that think that way. That's cool.
Yeah, I find that bizarre. I do.
I mean, yeah, I mean, whatever. I mean, yeah. It is what it is. I'll tell you, though, if we wouldn't have continued if we would have kept Jim. So it's really like, if you like the band, and if you like the band still to make records, well, this is how it's going to have to be.
My friend in the audience, who actually plays in a band with me, Coldacre, he's written Guilty. He's one of those people. He's written, the band was never the same after Jim. Well, fuck you. Fuck you, Coldacre. You're no longer my friend.
Yeah, whatever. Fair enough. It probably wasn't. That's good.
You're out of my band.
Cool.
Blasphemy. So there was a lot of side projects going on too. Like you were playing in Brujeria as well. I remember when we went to the after party with you, I remember we were sitting at the bar having a few drinks, and I was so picking your brain about Brujeria because, that first album you released with the decapitated head on the front was just like, what the fuck, man? Brutality. What pulled you over to that dark side of the metal world?
Just guys I grew up with in high school. It was just kind of a thing that we would do it was kind of a fun experiment, creative outlet. I like the music too. I mean, and the guys they were like the punk couple guys that were the punk guys in my high school that were friends of mine that I go to gigs with, and we just did it for fun. And we kind of, we wore masks because we never wanted to be a real band. It was just something. To me, really, it was a pressure valve from Faith No More. It's like I can escape that thing, and I can just do something to let off some steam. And that's really why we did it. And we kind of put things like that cover in as kind of like poison pills. Like, you can't get successful with a record cover like that. It was just meant to be something that really was just what it was. And I enjoyed that part of it. I think it was a really psychologically a great thing to be part of. That band changed too. And I stopped. I left the band in around 1999. They're still playing, and I know the guys in the band, and they're great. It's a great thing. It's different. It's different than when I was with them, but it's cool. I was happy to be part of that project for sure.
And it's interesting. I remember reading a lot of junk press back in the day, back when magazines were a thing. And a lot of people were like, there's tension with Mike Patton. He's in Mr. Bungle. But really, all you guys were doing different things. You've all been in a lot of side projects.
Yeah, but it's not the same thing. The way everybody did what they did was different.
Right.
It's much more nuanced than that. That's all I can say, really.
Yep, sure. I'm going to jump. I need to do a quick ad read, if that's cool with you. I'll keep you in on here because I'm going to do it a little bit different. Yep. So today's show, everybody, is, as always, once a month, sponsored by the amazing DistroKid. And what I'm going to talk about today with DistroKid is the pricing. So there's 3 plans, $19.99 a year, $35.99 a year, and $79.99 a year. For the lowest tier, you get to release unlimited albums, singles, whatever you want each year, unlimited per year for $20. For the $35 musicians plan, you get 2 artists to do it. And for the ultimate plan, which is what I'm on, you get 5 artists. And some of us need 5 artists because we just are not happy in one band, and that is it. But one of the features which is not often talked about DistroKid for releasing music, there's all these great things you can do with DistroKid, like promotion and just so much. We've talked about it so many times. But the one thing that I think people overlook is this. You can release your music and have it on Spotify and Apple Music alongside your favorite artists. And it just is a great feeling to look and go, do a search for Faith No More, and then find your music right next to it.
I'll tell you, actually, this is an appropriate thing to talk about, because I have a record label, right? And I've been doing for, 22 years now. And I release a lot less stuff on my label. And one of the reasons I tell the artists, like, go on to something like DistroKid. Why do you need me to take a cut of what you're doing when I'm going to do the exact same thing that you're doing? Really, you can do it yourself now. There is so much more empowerment for artists, which I think is absolutely fantastic. I think it's great. I think it's great.
Thank you for the endorsement of DistroKid. I want to thank DistroKid. You guys rock. You've supported me for a whole half a year now, and you're going into next year, and that makes my heart sing with joy because to see so many people release music throughout this community is fantastic. And remember, guys, there is a link in the chat, and if I'm really clever, I can do this. Bing! There it is right up the top there, DistroKid/VIP/Jade Starr, and you get 7% off your first year. Thank you, DistroKid. Let's get back and bring this in. So after Angel Dust is out, you're still touring. I mean, you guys are a really hard-working touring band, and your shows, all of them that I've seen, this ain't just you standing there, right? This ain't a. I mean, this is physical.
We're one thing I can say of all the tough times, the good times, the tough times, but we've been very equal in our commitment. When we play live, they're always full on. Always. And always been that way. That's one thing I've always been proud of.
I remember on the King for a Day tour, Man, I saw Mike Patton throwing himself at the floor like he was just smashing his body into the floor. I was like, what the hell is that man doing to himself? And I remember, I don't know if this is true or not, reading stories that he was walking around with a cane after some gigs because he just smashed himself up so much. I don't know if that's true.
He smashed himself. I don't know. I don't know. He would be doing it now. He has walked around with a cane, in recent times. I don't think he smashes himself. I don't think he can smash himself around like
No.
he used to. He took a dive. We played in Brazil. One of the last shows we did, like 2015, where he jumped off the stage and his head missed this like steel bar by about 3 inches, and he had a huge bruise on his back, and he could barely walk after that. But I think that was a real coming of age moment for him, where he realized he's got to lay off the body thrashing.
Yeah, I think it's really encouraging. Like, there's been bands I've seen who I've loved and then gone and seen them live and they just stood there and I felt so disconnected from them. And it's really a thing. If you're able to generate such energy that just makes people want to lose their shit as well. It's really commendable.
Well, yeah, I think that's one thing that's one thing I think that kept me going with these guys, was that I think everybody felt that way. There's like, if you're up there, make the most out of it, get the most out of it. And we did that. And even no matter how tired we were, I mean, we really could pull that out of ourselves. And it's a great thing.
So you move on to the next album, which is King for a Day, Fool for a Lifetime, which I remember reading reports that Trace Bruins has joined the band. I'm just like, what the hell? I don't know what I was expecting, because being a Mr. Bungle fan, I think many people were expecting Girls of Porn or something. But when it came out, it wasn't that. And that was good, because there's only one Mr. Bungle and there's only one Faith No More. But he didn't go on tour with you. Was that organized from the beginning, that you knew he wasn't going to go on tour with you, or was it just performing on the album?
No. I had no idea. I was actually that record was difficult to make, in as they all have been. And
a common theme.
I remember that once we finished mixing that record, when Last Song was done, I was like, I'm just going to book a flight to the farthest place away from here that I can possibly find, and call me when the tour starts. And so I went to Chile, and I just showed up at the airport, and I just told the taxi driver, take me to the plaza. We're in South America. There has to be a plaza here. I didn't know anybody there. And I ended up staying for 2.5 months. But during that time, I found the record company there, and they would let me make free phone calls. So I would just, walk over to the record company and get on the phone just to check in with everybody, see how everything's going. And Trey was out of the band.
Wow.
So we had to find somebody. And Dean, who was our keyboard tech, who could play guitar, like, he was already in the band before. So I got the call. It's like, Trey's out of the band. Oh man, but Dean's in the band. Okay. And then I remember hanging up the phone, and it was December roughly, which is wintertime here, but summertime down there. And I remember just thinking, it's such a beautiful day down here. Like, the sun is out, the palm trees, and it's freezing up there. And I'm just so fucking glad I'm down here. That was my thought.
It's around this time when King for a Day was released. It's almost, and again, this is just my opinion, so it's worth shit. Everybody has an opinion like an asshole. From here on, everything else, Faith No More, to me, really found its flavor. Like, it feels like the rhythm section knew what it is locked in stone. It feels like the whole sound really locked in. There was this mix of everything going forward from now on. Is that fair to say in your opinion?
I felt strong. Yes, I think that we were strong as a unit, as a playing unit, and a writing unit, definitely. We were really weird. It was a weird time, because we were actually, like, in Australia, we were rising in popularity. In South America, we were rising. Europe was stable. The United States, we were declining. Angel Dust was a failure, and we were on our way down. So we were kind of like succeeding and failing at the same time.
So odd, man.
All of that feedback. We was very schizophrenic. But I think playing wise, we were good. We were solid.
It's interesting. You hear from artists from other countries who always say America's such a hard place to crack. I've lived in America for a couple of years. It was during the time Trump was elected. That was a bizarre time. But
Wonderful.
no, what a great time to live in America. But yeah, even hearing that, being an American band and finding it hard to even crack in your own country. Why do you think it is that? Why do you think Americans are so particular with their music, it seems? Because we
That's
loved
the $1 million question.
we fucking loved you here. Like in Australia, like fuck, you could do no wrong.
Hey, great things come out of America.
Of
Great
course.
things come out of here.
100%.
Great bands have come out of here. But I would say that the support, the and maybe they're great because they're coming out of actually a hard place where there's a lot of not greatness. But America in general, in the bigger picture, musically, isn't really that inspiring to me, and it's not that exciting. What is mainstream here is I don't relate to those bands, and I don't relate to those people. I don't feel like I ever have. So I can understand why we were losing connection with people here because I think that we really were like, we're these guys from San Francisco. Even San Francisco, it's like the Melbourne of the United States, but more extreme. Like, there's a huge country out there that's not like us.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
We feel fine. We're to us, we're normal. But in the American bigger picture, we weren't normal. And I don't think we could have become normal. I don't think we could have done anything. I don't think we could have tried to crack that code. I don't know what that code is, and I don't want to know what that code is. I just know who we are and what we did.
Yeah.
And I'm cool with that. Totally cool with that.
Look, I loved my time in America. I moved to America for 2 years. I came there for health reasons to get medical help, and that didn't work. But I got to stay there for 2 years, and every day I got to play some gigs in Chicago and
Cool.
Minneapolis.
Cool.
I lived in, and it was, man, everything
Awesome.
was just
That's a great city.
so amazing for arts, and the streets are so wide, and everything's so big, and the cups of drink are like this, and I would love to live there permanently. When I left, it was very sad. I overstayed. I was so wanting to stay there forever. I overstayed, and I was scared that they were going to come and round me up, but they didn't.
Oh my God. There's a lot. I mean, this and like I said, being isolated in the West Coast in San Francisco, it's this little bubble of 600,000 people. But this is a really huge country, and there's a lot here, man. New Orleans is a great town. St. Louis, Missouri is a great town. Like, there's some really fucking great towns here, and it's so big that even I forget. I forget until I go on tour and I go, God, I forgot about this place. There's a lot here. There really is. It's a really huge, complex place.
Yeah, the world focuses on so much negative these days, and in my time being a trans person living in the US, I was scared fucking shitless. I had a layover in Texas. And that was around the time they were running trans bathroom
but how
bills.
were you? How are you treated in Texas? Fine, right?
Yeah. Oh, look, I had a layover, and I was on the phone to my friend saying, "I'm in Texas at the airport. I'm scared to go to the toilet," because this was when all the bathroom fiasco was going on. We're not allowed to go to the toilet. And this little old woman next to me turned around and said, "I heard you on the phone, dear, that you were scared to go to the toilet. If you would like, I'll hold your hand and take you." That was the first person I met in America.
It's really the media has done a lot here. I mean, we had a black singer with Chuck, and first tour we ever did, we went through Texas, into Mississippi, New Orleans, Alabama, Florida, which were, we saw, he's a black singer in a punk band. Well, they would think it was a punk band playing small, gigs, and people were fucking awesome. We had a great time. With people. He didn't experience anything that he was worried about experiencing. So, I don't know. A lot of this, I mean, I know it exists, but I haven't seen it in Texas. Really, I've always had a great time when I go to Texas.
Yeah, I think that we focus on the.
I don't know. I think it exists, but it's not really like how you read it is.
Yeah, we live in a world where we focus on these focusing on these negative things and
To get
personify them.
inflated.
Yeah,
Yes,
and it's
exactly.
just not true. Absolutely not true.
Exactly.
So
No, the world is a much more complex place.
absolutely, and we are incredibly complex beings. So
Exactly.
you release King for a Day, extensive touring, album of the year comes out, another fucking killer album. With a more, to me, was a more consistent flow throughout that album. It was very
Yeah.
similar across the whole. Like there was nothing that was too jarring.
Well, it had a color. It had a color
yeah.
to it. That yes, and the edges were sanded off a little bit. That's right.
Yeah, and again, a great
That's
addition.
what it was.
So,
That's where we were. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
were these newer albums that were coming out? Were these doing better than Angel Dust? Were these connecting more people to your music? When you said Angel Dust was a bit of a fizzer
Album of the year, Australia. I think it had top 10. Ashes to Ashes was top 10. I think. States, no, dead.
Wow.
Europe, pretty good. South America, pretty good. US, we were done.
Well, you could come to Australia and piss in a cup and we'd drink it. So it is what it is.
And we have.
And I probably drank it.
Yeah.
But after that album, that's when you guys decided to call it quits. What was the process of this? Was this hard? Was this a long period of time to discuss this and come to this point? Because I was fucking devastated.
That was that was a really complex period of time. There was a lot of different energies happening from different people that all kind of I only know how I could see it. I mean, I'm my own participant. I can't speak for anybody else. But the way I saw it was, I was just trying to do what I could to get this through this record, and I was so exhausted by the end of it, by what it took to get that fucking thing done, that I needed a break. I needed a break from those guys. I needed a break from the whole thing. So that was kind of how I looked at it. I'm not sure about anybody else. I'm sure they saw it as ways for them to do other creative pursuits and things like that. But yeah, it was sad because I've always felt like, we really hadn't said everything we needed to say, and there was a lot more potential to this. And just speaking for myself as a bass player with our drummer, I mean, we had this great thing with this. We became this really great rhythm section through touring and just really gelling, and it's just like seemed such a shame to throw that away.
Yeah, it was heartbreaking as a fan, and it just was. I was totally lost. I'm a really big fan, as you can tell. But in that time, this is where this is around, I'm guessing 2000. So you started your record label, which is Koolarrow.
1998, 1989, 99. Yeah.
Right.
Started Koolarrow, exactly.
And what inspired you to make a label? Because that's a hard slog.
Hard slog. But I wanted to work with music, and I didn't have a band anymore. And I didn't want to just go through this. It's kind of like, I can think about it as if, say you're married for 20 years, the last thing you want to do is go back into the dating circuit again.
Yeah.
It's like you have to go through all that shit. I just went through 20 years of working all this stuff with these guys, all this stuff. Why do I want to go back to square one and do it all over again? Right. But having a label was a way to kind of like, I could produce projects. I could be like a member of a band, but not have to be stuck in the band. So it was a way to me to stay creative and musical and work with musical stuff. And there were great bands that weren't getting released in the States that were just falling through the cracks. Like one of the first things I released was a band from Australia, actually, called Not From There. Fantastic. Great band. Great. And great guys. They came out. We did a little tour. I loved them. And that's the kind of stuff that gave me the energy to keep working, because after Faith No More, I was kind of depressed.
So did you have a motto for this label? Was there a driving force on what kind of artists you wanted to look for? Who
obviously stuff that was falling through the cracks, but
right.
Being on tour, I was getting a lot of band demo tapes, people like your band, right? And I remember I was in a band. I was in Finland, and I went to a guy's house. And he was playing a tape of his band, and they were kind of popular in Finland. And it was like, this music's fucking awesome. What's the name of your band? And I would go back and come back home, and I'd turn people like, listen to this, and people, wow, this is great. And it's like, there's no way it's ever going to come out here. And I would just think, I could be a pipeline of like getting international bands and bringing them into the United States, because the United States is always exporting its bullshit everywhere else. Like, I wanted to try to bring things in the other direction, and bring things in here, because I think actually what we lose here is this, we originate everything culturally. Everything comes out of us, and we're not getting outside information, and we're isolated. And I think that I think it's healthy. I think it'd be healthier for people to have, international bands in their record collections, because there's a different approach to things. And I think it makes a difference.
And I mean,
so that's kind of what got me into doing that.
Yeah, and there's a real international flavour with your label, and clearly, like, you've toured the world over and over, and even now, when you're not playing in a band, travelling is a big thing for you, isn't it? Like, especially over in Europe.
It is, because, well, I mean, that's the part of touring that I always loved, and when you do something like that for so long, it's very hard to like let that go, because it becomes normal, and I would just get really depressed, if I'm not going to a new place and getting that stimulation and learning something. And this is a great opportunity. Like, I went to Moscow, in the 90s, for 2 months to make a record. And I just stayed out there and got to live out there. It was a different language, different money, different food, everything was absolutely different. I live for that shit. I love it.
I remember reading a story too that you guys were touring, I think, in Europe when the Berlin Wall came down, and
we were in there the night that it came down. We played, yeah.
And you played man, I'm racking my brain for this. I'm trying to think back, but I'm sure you played like some song to close the show that was special, or maybe my brain's screwed. But on the actual day that it happened, yeah, I'm maybe forgetting things. I don't know, but yeah, was that a big thing? Or like when you're on tour to have that happen while you're actually touring?
Fuck yeah, it was huge.
It was a big thing for everybody. But
I mean,
yeah.
Come on,
Yeah.
I mean, and when you're a musician and you're touring, I don't know what it is. Maybe it's the way I grew up, but I always saw like rock and roll and like Elvis Presley was adventure, going into the South and playing and having all the people banning his concerts and banning their kids. And seeing David Bowie when I was a kid, there was always a really pioneering, adventurous, confrontational aspect to rock and roll. And being in a place, being in this band, and you're traveling the world, and countries are coming down, and you're there to see it. Like, it's pretty intense. It's getting caught up in the moment. I mean, I connect my job and what I'm doing. I'm here traveling. I'm doing this thing. I'm making this music, and this music got me here to see this. I mean, it's fantastic.
Amazing. So you take it. You end the band, and 2009 you get back together.
Yeah.
You go on tour. People are scratching their heads going, is there going to be a new album? I went and saw you come out here for that tour.
Oh, I know.
And fuck me. I mean, it was so hard to get a ticket. I was living in Sydney at the time. Tickets were gone like that. To get my 2 tickets to come and see you, it cost me $1,200 fucking dollars. The best $1,200 on eBay. I had to buy them on eBay. But I could not give a
God.
fuck.
You're serious?
Absolutely. Like, hey, you hadn't played for 11 years, and people went bonkers, and I was not going to fucking miss out. And $1,200 was a piss in the ocean to me, because I sold gear for it.
Man,
I actually sold my mixing desk for that.
Crazy.
And it was so worth it. It was so worth it. They were great seats too. It was fucking amazing.
See, you wouldn't have a show running on iPads if it wasn't for us.
Exactly. but yeah, but the question was on everybody's mind. You're out there. I saw you playing. All my favorite songs were played. I was like a pig in shit, rolling around, happy as fuck. But the question was, is there going to be another album? Is there going to be another album? Were you bombarded with that shit? All those questions?
Oh yeah. I mean, it was kind of tough for me because I was like, yeah, but I
Yeah.
can't. I'm not the only guy. I mean, everybody's got to be on board, or it doesn't happen, right? So yeah, I hated, and I didn't. It's still tough for me to answer because all I can say is I wanted to do it. That's all I can say. I just had to keep my mouth shut.
I find that really interesting.
I hate those bands. I saw a Pixies documentary somebody was asking them that, and I could see that they didn't want to make new music, and they had this like smile on their face, and it's like, and I just said to myself, like, I don't ever want to be that guy doing that.
Yeah.
I don't want to be that guy. Like, I don't want to be doing this and like where it's obvious that I don't see a creative side to this. But but it's a good paying gig, and I'm going to do the fucking gig. I never want to be that guy. So I hated seeing myself be that guy by keeping my mouth shut. I really hated it.
Yeah, well, I'm going to go back and hey, look, I'm amazed. I remember this because we both had many drinks on this night. We went to this after party on the Angel Dust tour. Me and you sat at a
Yep.
bar. We were talking about Brujeria. You even like were
Yeah.
telling me, about the shit that was going on in the band, and I felt quite privy to that information, and we were pretty mashed. But the one thing that I got from that conversation, I'll never forget, was a lot of people would look at Faith No More and go, Mike Patton. After having a conversation with you that night, I walked away believing that you were the leader of the band. It's funny that because I don't know.
I mean, in some ways that's kind of true, and in a lot of ways it's not because I can't make anybody do anything that they don't want to do.
Yeah.
But I do feel of all the guys that I feel the most personally connected, I think, to the band called Faith No More. Like I feel probably the most protective of it than anybody else, and that's not necessarily a good thing, but it is what it is. And so I stress out about things a little more than other people do because I get a little bit that way. So maybe in some ways I am the leader, and in a lot of ways
I'm going to bring this home. I've gone a little bit over time, so thank you for your patience with me today.
Yeah,
It is a
no
once in
problem.
a lifetime opportunity, this for me. So thank you
Yeah,
again.
sure.
So you go back from touring, and Sol Invictus becomes a thing, and you start recording this yourself. From what I've heard and what I've read, you had like a fucking like 50 songs or something for this album. Is this like something?
There was a lot. I mean, yeah. I mean, because I was always writing anyway. I never
Yeah.
stopped writing, so I had just tons of stuff. And then there was new stuff too. And then once I started talking to Puffy first, and it's like, let's just start doing some stuff. And he's like, okay. And then Roddy kind of got in, and then he was like, who knows where it's going to go? Let's just do it. And so we had more stuff, and so there was actually a lot of stuff. And once it started coming to a part where it started gelling, like it's like, okay, well, we should probably tell Patton about it because it's starting to sound like music. And then he was just like, what? You want me to do this? Like, it's like, oh, come on. You're not really going to say this, are you? But yeah, it was absolutely no problem. It's like, yeah, sure. Great. Let's do it. And it's like, so all these years of me like shutting up and keeping my mouth shut, maybe I should have been a little more vocal. Like, hey guys, practices on fucking Thursday. Get your ass in there. Maybe I should have done that. I don't know. I think it took a little longer. I think it could have come a little sooner, and I definitely suffered for it. But at the end of the day, we got what we wanted, so it was okay.
And this is your first foray really into producing because you had a lot to do with the production of this album.
I did because I didn't want anybody involved. Like, and when we first started, we didn't know what we were going to do with it. And I was like, I've got this mics, I got this gear. Let's just start recording and just see where it goes. It doesn't hurt, doesn't cost anything. And then it's like I didn't really want anybody to know because I didn't want to start hearing from the rumor mill that we were making a new record. I didn't want that pressure. I didn't want people to start getting their interests in it. Like when I talked about, before when we were, there's a lot of other people who then find the way to get their stick their oars in. And so,
Yeah.
we didn't even tell our wives, for a while that we were making new music.
Wow.
We just wanted to keep it, just keep it personal. Just keep it personal. And then if we feel like we got something, then we can take it from there. And so that's what we did. And I was like, let's just keep going. We got the stuff. We like kind of how it's sounding. I mean, it's a rehearsal room. It's not a recording studio, but it's like, you know what? We could do it. We could do it ourselves. It's empowering. If you're going to go down, you get one more shot to go down. Let's go down kicking. Let's do it ourselves. And there's something really empowering about that. I think that really made it made it worthwhile to me.
The first single
I don't know
dropped.
if I'd do it again like that.
Oh, right. Right.
But it was a great thing to do. I mean, it's hard. There's a lot of
Yeah.
other responsibility to come with it. You record this thing, and the poor fucking drummer, gets this take right of something that's kind of hard to play, and then you hear it later, and there's like some distortion on the cymbals because you didn't set the mics right,
Yeah.
and then you got to tell them to come back and do it again, right? There's a
Yeah.
lot of other bullshit that comes with that. You can't just yell at the engineer, because I'm the engineer. But no, it was great. It was really great.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of people in this community here who do collaborations with each other, and it's amazing how they do it. We do this over the internet, sharing files, and then they dump these songs and their covers and originals, and it blows my mind. And I know there's a lot of people in this community here who ask me to do collabs, and I often turn them down because I am an anal perfectionist, and I don't want to be held responsible for fucking up their song.
So this goes back to the perfection thing that you were asking me. You were asking me because you are a perfectionist.
Absolutely.
Yes, it's a tough thing.
It's hard.
It's a tough thing. We would rather not be this way. I know.
I'm a Virgo, and I cringe over stuff. I overthink everything, and won't release something until it's absolutely perfect. And you know what? It never is. And it's been a long, hard journey to understand that you have to let things go sometimes and just move on.
It's hard. You have to remember, you did this in the beginning to make yourself happy, and you can't let it not make you happy. You have to learn how to make yourself happy.
Absolutely.
Because nothing is perfect in this world. Nothing, and it never will be. And if that's your goal, then you're in for a world of pain. That's all I can say.
Bill, I end every show that I do every day with the words, do the things that make you happy. It's one of my best songs I've ever written because it's the one thing that I truly believe, and most people who connect with my music say that is your song. And it is, like, just do what makes you happy. It's so simple, and people get so caught up on what other people think. And I think one of the things about Faith No More that rocks is you guys seem like you just didn't give a fuck what people thought. And that's another, it's not only the music that connected with me, it's that attitude, it's that hunger to just be and do and whatever comes. And that's what,
I would say that's true. Yeah. I'm very proud that all of us were like that together.
Well, I'm going to bring things in here. So let's talk about your latest thing. So you've released, I'm not going to ask if you're going to release a new album. Oh, the one thing I did want to touch on, the BBC recording you did of the songs from Soul Invictus.
Yeah, great, right?
Fuck me. I've never heard a band perform live and just get a sound like that. It is just, if you haven't seen it, folks, go and check it out.
First of all, it's in BBC Studios, and they're fucking awesome.
Yeah.
But I will say this. This shows you a lot, right? We recorded that album. We were cool with it. We were happy with it. But then we played it for about 2 months live. And we did the BBC. It was on an off day. We had played London the night before. We got it there early in the morning, and we just nailed it. We were done by 1 or 2 that afternoon. We were tired, but we've been playing these songs live for about a month or 2. Man, playing music live makes all the difference. And that recording with no overdubs sounds as good or better than the record because of the looseness we had, the confidence we had in that music. And that's all I can say. I think if I do another one again with these guys, we're gonna really know it next time.
Yeah, that BBC recording is amazing because on the album, I'm a massive fan of Mike Patton. Clearly, I'm a singer, And throughout my time, many people have said, you sound exactly like Mike Patton. I've sung in Faith No More cover bands. dude, I know it's just been something I've lived with. Not that I've ever ripped off Mike Patton. Sometimes there are just doppelgangers in this world. And for
Yeah.
some reason, I sung a particular way and then I heard him and went, holy shit, that dude's wow. Anyway, it is what it is. But on the album Soul Invictus, this sounds like there's so much vocal shit going on. But on that BBC recording, it's just him and a mic. And it's even better than the vocals on the album because it's, I don't know, it's an amazing
I agree.
performance. Amazing performance. I love it so much.
There's an engineer, a really good engineer told me once, which I've always took to heart, was like, you can always, if you have the worst recording in the world, but the best performance, it can work. If you have a bad performance on an excellent recording, all you have is an excellent recording of a bad performance. It doesn't work.
Yeah.
The performance and the playing is everything.
Yeah, 100%. So I'm going to bring up this. Now, would you like to tell us about your latest endeavor into the world of alcohol?
Yes. Well, this actually started back when we were talking about Berlin, when the wall fell. Eastern Europe opened up for touring. So Faith No More toured out there a lot in the early days. And I just started going out there. I love it out there. And one of the places I really became attached to was the Balkans. And this is this drink called rakia that, you have a lot of Balkan people in Australia that they know all about rakia. It's something that you make on the farm and everybody makes it and it's amazing. And it never made its way out here to the States. And the stuff that did make its way out was kind of this industrial commercial stuff. And I kind of feel it's the same with even in Australia as well. So after talking about rakia, because I've had this amazing homemade family stuff and I jonesed for it. I mean, I love it. And I'd go out to, Serbia or Bosnia or whatever, once every year, twice, sometimes twice a year. I just like it out there. I just decided like 3 years ago, I'm going to hook up a real one that's made on a farm by hand and I'm going to introduce it to the States. So that's what I started doing. And I've been doing this for 3 years. It's this stuff. It's just made from plums and water on a family farm of these guys who just really, really know how to do it. I mean, this is a tradition that goes back to like the 1100s. So it's an old distilled spirit. That's just, I don't know. I love it. It's got a lot of vibe. It's made from fruit. It's not like whiskey where it's just water and barrel. It's actually, the fruit actually has a personality to it. And so that's kind of, to me, I get the same pleasure turning people onto this stuff like I do with my music. It's just something that's really interesting that I want to share with people.
I love this so much. I did as much research on this as I possibly could. And as I was reading this, I was licking the absolute fuck out of my lips. This is going to be on my order list. I want to get some of this. Do I have to order this from the website?
It's coming. It's coming to Australia. You can't internationally. You can't ship this stuff, but it is coming. 2023. It's arriving in Australia. I would say probably spring. March, probably.
Awesome. That's
a safe bet. But it's coming. The deal's done. Labels are made, ready to get on the cargo container. So it's gonna come out there. I'm really excited. I hope I can come out there when it comes. When it launches.
Bill, you are an incredibly fascinating human being. Not only are you this juggernaut of bass, if it's picking, slapping, playing with fingers, your rhythm section is amazing. For you to start a label and seek out independent artists who don't, people who you wouldn't expect to get signed, and even to foray into alcohol, it's just. Would you change anything in your life that you've lived? Is there any regrets that you've had that really bug you?
Yes. The older I get, the less I can eat fatty foods. It really bothers me. And I can't drink beer like I used to. I love beer. I just can't drink it anymore. It really, really makes me upset.
Did that fuck you over with COVID? Because I know a lot of us put on a bit of weight over COVID.
No, that wasn't so bad. No, this happened to me about, I don't know, 7 or 8 years ago. I just noticed when I drink a beer, I'd wake up in the middle of the night. And it had either to do with the carbohydrates in the alcohol that would wake me up, but it was really annoying. And so I just can't do it. It just doesn't make me feel good. And I love it. But getting old sucks. That's I guess
It sure does.
that's my big regret.
It's a toilet.
Yep.
All right, we're going to wrap this up. Hopefully, look,
Yep.
I'm not going to ask you this question. I'm going to make a statement. I really hope in the future there's another Faith No More album. I would love to hear another Faith
Me
No
too.
More album. I would love to see you perform again, even if it's only once more in my life. So I really hope that becomes a thing. And I'm not saying make it happen, but it would be super awesome. And I'm sure many people would agree. I ask everybody this last final question just to wrap it up. It's not a hard question, but
Yep.
if there was someone out there considering becoming creative and making music or doing something, when do you think would be the best time to start?
Well, I mean, there's no wrong time. You could start when you're 50, but I say start as soon as you can. If you think you want to do it, just start doing it. Don't look back.
Absolutely. It's not a trick question. The reason I ask this every time is because there is no time like now. And,
Nope,
I want to
that's right.
reinforce everybody watching just to make your dreams come true. Follow your dreams, follow your heart, be happy. One guy I asked this question, he called me a dickhead for that. I'll never understand that. All right. Well, I want to thank you so very much for your time. You have given me 2 hours of your time, and I feel very grateful for that. I want to thank you for your music that you have provided over the years. Without your music, I wouldn't be making music the way I do these days. Your band has been a massive influence on me. I can't say that enough. It has blown my mind that you have given me the time today, and I'm very grateful. So thank you so very much for that.
I have to say I'm grateful that what we did connected with you and made such an impact. I'm very grateful for that. And also thank you all the rest of you guys that have to listen to this old man go on about his old band from the fucking 80s and 90s.
And I want to thank everybody here who's been in the chat today. There's consistently been up 40, 45 people. I think we peaked at 47. So thank you in the live chat for being here. You guys,
Cool.
you support my channel. You're wonderful. I love all of you. You create great music, and it's just, it makes my heart sing every day. If you'll just please hang on the line just so I can say goodbye to you off the air, that would be really cool. And
Sure.
we'll wrap this up.
Absolutely.
Folks, I want you all to flood the chat right now with Billy Gould emojis for those of you who have them. Fill it up, hit the like, do the subscribe, do all the things. And I will finish up by saying, as I say every show, do the things that make you happy. Mistakes make you better. And we will all rise together. Thank you very much, Bill. See you later, everybody.
We'll
Cool.
all rise together, 'cause you make me shine better.
And thank you to DistroKid, our amazing sponsor. I love you too.